This video will go through the answers to the multiple choice questions related to electrolysis. Hopefully by the end you'll be able to get all the answers correct. Question 1. An electrochemical cell is used to electroplate an iron spoon with nickel. Let's just have a look at what the cell setup would look like. We'd have a nickel rod to provide the nickel ions and the iron spoon as indicated. The electrolyte would require nickel 2+ ions. Those would then be reduced to form the nickel plating on the iron spoon. So the iron spoon must be negative then to attract the nickel 2+ ions, which means the nickel rod must be positive, and so the cell would look something like that. And so the question asks us about the positive electrode, so that would be the nickel electrode, and that nickel electrode would corrode away. The nickel will be oxidized, in other words lose electrons to form nickel 2+ that goes into solution. And so D is our correct answer, nickel going to form nickel 2+ plus 2 electrons. Question 2. Which half reaction occurs at the cathode during the electrolysis of copper chloride? That's what the electrolytic cell would look like. I use a little mnemonic oil rig, and I add an A at the end of oilar rig, and that reminds me that oxidation is loss at the anode and reduction is gain, and that therefore must be at the cathode. And so this asks about the cathode, so it must be the electrode at which reduction takes place. Remember, reduction is the gain of electrons, and it's the copper 2+ ions that need to gain electrons, and so that equation there, copper 2+ plus 2 electrons giving us copper, that's D, that must be the correct answer. Alright, the chloralkali process, name which one of the following correctly shows the gases at the anode and cathode. Now I hope you know that oxygen gas is not produced, and so A can't be right, and water vapor is also not produced, so D can't be right. But let's have a look at the cell. That's what it looks like. The anode is on the left of the cell as shown, and that's the electrode at which oxidation takes place. Remember, that's the definition. Oxidation is loss at the anode, and so it's the chloride ions in that compartment that will lose 2 electrons to form chlorine gas. So chlorine gas at the anode. The cathode is the anode at which reduction takes place, and that's the one where the H+ ions are reduced to hydrogen. So that means that C is the correct answer. Chlorine at the anode, hydrogen at the cathode. Alright, let's have a look at question 4. Which one of the statements regarding an electrolytic cell is correct? A, the electric current causes a chemical change. That is correct, it's a definition. So that's probably the right answer. Let's look at B. Reduction occurs at the anode. No, reduction occurs at the cathode, so B can't be right. Spontaneous, no, we can stop right there because electrolytic cells require electric energy. It's not a spontaneous chemical reaction, so C is not right. Electrons flow to the electrode where oxidation occurs. Again, no, electrons flow to where reduction occurs because reduction is gain. And so D can't be correct. So A is the correct answer. Okay, question 5, again about the membrane cell and what's formed at the cathode. There's a picture of the cell. The cathode is the negative electrode on the right hand side, and that's the one where hydrogen is produced. Remember, cathode is defined as the electrode at which reduction takes place, and there you can see the reduction half reaction. So hydrogen's our gas that's formed. Here we have a setup for electroplating a copper ring with nickel. To electroplate something with nickel, we need an electrolyte containing nickel ions that will then be reduced and form the nickel plating on the ring. And so our electrolyte must have nickel in it, and if you look at A and B, those options both have copper sulfate as electrolytes, so they can't be the correct answer. Alright, so the half reaction that's going to take place, nickel 2+ is going to be reduced, gain 2 electrons to form nickel, and that's a reduction half reaction, which therefore has to happen at the cathode, and so the copper ring must be the cathode, which means that our nickel rod must be the anode. And so D is our correct answer, anode of the nickel rod, cathode of the copper ring, and nickel sulfate as the electrolyte containing nickel ions. There's not much to say on this one. The question asks for the role of cryolite, and that's simply to decrease the melting point of the aluminium oxide. So D is the correct answer. Another question about the membrane cell, this time what's formed at the anode. The anode's the positive electrode. The chloride ions would be attracted to that electrode, and so chlorine gas is the correct answer. In a redox reaction, an oxidizing agent is, well, oxidizing agents oxidize something else, and they themselves are reduced. And so A or B could be our correct answer. C and D both indicate that the oxidizing agent is oxidized. That's not true, so they can't be correct. So an oxidizing agent oxidizes something else. It is reduced itself, and reduction is gain of electrons, and so B must be our correct answer. Right, in an electrolysis cell, the anode is a picture of a electrolysis cell electrolyzing copper chloride. The anode is where oxidation takes place, and oxidation is loss of electrons, and it's the negative ion, the Cl- ion, that will lose electrons to form chlorine, and that electrode's positive. So the anode must be positively charged in an electrolytic cell. Let's look at the other options. The electrode at which the electrode at which reduction takes place, no, it's defined as the one at which oxidation takes place. C, negatively charged, no, it's positively charged. And D, always made from carbon. They're often made from carbon, but not always. They can be made from any material that's inert. Platinum would also do, unless it's an electroplating cell, in which case you will use the metal that's going to provide the ions to electroplate whatever it is you're wanting to electroplate. So D is not the correct answer either.